Hello and welcome to TrackVia's Creating Clean and Valuable Dashboards. My name is Michelle Martz Mayfield and I am the Corporate Communications and PR Manager. I'm going to start you off today with a little bit of housekeeping. We have started you off in listen-only mode, so please stay in that so everyone can hear the presentation. If you do have questions, please submit them via the chat window and we will get to those if we can, and those that we don't get to, we will follow up in an email. This webinar will be recorded and we'll send a follow-up email to you with that recording within 48 hours. We welcome you all to this webinar. We hope we will provide you with some valuable information. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Derek, who's the Director of our Training Operations, and he is going to be your host today. Here you go, Derek.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone, for joining our monthly admin webinar here. Excited to talk about dashboards and how you can get the most value out of the dashboards that you design for your applications and for your end users. So let's jump in and go ahead and start with an agenda here. We're going to start with a quick definition of dashboards, right? Just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we start talking so much about dashboards, right? We want to know what they are. And then we're going to talk about why it's so important to create good dashboards, right? Dashboards that our users will enjoy interacting with. Then we'll talk about how, right? How do we design those dashboards? What principles can we keep in mind as we're going through the building or revamping of dashboards that we've currently got out there, right? We'll turn around, we'll jump into TrackVia. We'll look at a couple of dashboards today. I think we're going to look at 4 dashboards, hopefully give you some ideas and ways that you can use different elements and design your dashboards. And then we'll kind of just wrap it up by talking about some of the key takeaways, some of the things that we talked about throughout this presentation. We'll do some questions and then we'll wrap things up. Okay. As I'm going through this, please don't hesitate to send through any questions, comments, observations, whatever you'd like, just send it through the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on what's coming in. And I'll try to kind of weave those in as we go through. But if I don't get to it, we'll definitely get to it at the end. So make sure you're just sending through anything you've got. All right, so let's just do a quick definition of dashboards. I think most people are generally familiar with what a dashboard is, at least conceptually. Within TrackVia, dashboards are actually one of the more simplistic aspects of any application. They're really just a single page where you can place other things that you've created in your apps, right? So maybe you have some forms that you've created or some views, and you want to give those elements, those resources to your end users. You would take them and you would put them onto a dashboard, right? You can see from the picture here, this person is interacting with a dashboard that has a couple of charts, couple of views on it, right? So it's taking multiple things and putting them onto one screen. Okay, now it's, like I said, it's super easy to create dashboards within TrackVia, but it definitely, it's almost too easy, right? It's almost too easy to just throw everything all onto one screen. So why do we want to think about the actual dashboard design? Well, let's talk about that. First and foremost, a dashboard is the first thing that people see when they log into TrackVia. Okay, if you're a user and you type in your credentials and you log in, you're going to see a dashboard, right? So it's you want that first impression to be a good one, right? Imagine if you're logging into an app for the first time and what you see is, you know, something that's messy, or you don't understand what you're looking at, or it's you know, lengthy, disorganized, whatever it may be. You're not going to have a warm, fuzzy feeling, right? So what we want to do is make sure, you know, when people log into the system, they're seeing something that immediately presents value to them, okay? And it looks good, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason is that dashboards really drive most of the interaction that users have within the system, okay? Now, as administrators, as the ones setting up the applications, we can kind of navigate all around the application. We can go to whatever view or whatever form we want pretty easily through that admin menu at the top, right? But limited users, they don't have the ability to do that, right? They have to interact with the application through a dashboard, essentially, okay? So it's important that we take the time to make sure that the dashboards that they're interacting with are good, right? Are valuable to them, okay? To them, the dashboard almost is the app, right? It's the face of your app, okay? So one of the most important things to focus on. All right, so let's go ahead and just talk about some of the design principles that we try to work into all the dashboards that we create here at TrackVia. We're going to start with probably the most important principle, okay? And that's designing your dashboards for individual roles, okay? So if we think about the permission structure of TrackVia for a moment, it's role-based, okay? So what we get to do is we get to define a couple of groupings of users that are going to be using our application and create a role for them so that anybody assigned to a role has kind of a similar experience, okay? Now, we're going to look at an order management application as we go into our examples. And that order management application has two roles that we're going to be looking at, a sales rep role and a manager role, okay? So if we're designing our dashboards, we want to have dashboards that are specific to the sales reps, and we want to have dashboards that are specific to the managers, okay? Now, it's a rule of thumb, right? There's of course going to be some scenarios where maybe there's one dashboard, it's a company-wide reporting dashboard, and you want everybody in the company to have access to that. That's fine, right? Go ahead, you can create that dashboard, you can give every role access to it. But most of the time, we want to think about, okay, which role is going to be using this dashboard, and let's design it for them. Okay, and that does it does two major things for our users, right? The first thing is it provides a very, very personalized experience, okay? If we were to create one dashboard that had sales rep stuff on it and manager stuff on it, then it gets messy, right? And both roles are seeing a lot of things that they don't care about, right? We want to make sure that they only see the things that are going to provide value to them, okay? It makes it easier for them to use as well, right? So that when they look at the dashboard, they don't see 100 things, they just see the 10 things that they need, okay? It also makes it so it's a little bit easier to provision role-wise, right? So you can just give your role access to that one dashboard, and there's no overlap, and you won't get confused as to who has what dashboards and such, okay? The next principle that we try to really think about, and this is probably the second most important, is to reduce the amount of scrolling that our users experience when they're interacting with dashboards. And this is actually something that we think about in many different places in TrackVia, whether it's on forms or views or dashboards, right? We want to reduce the amount of kind of up and down or left and right scrolling when they're looking for information. Okay, it's a user experience thing. It's just a lot easier to find the information if it's all kind of tight and neat in one space rather than sprawled over a large area. And it's also a performance reason, or something that we think about from a performance perspective. And a lot of times that can go overlooked. Now, what I mean there is if you have a lot of elements on one dashboard and you go to that dashboard, you're asking TrackVia to load all of those resources. So if you have 20 views, you go to that dashboard, TrackVia has to load 20 views, but you may only be looking for one thing, right? You're doing a lot of unnecessary processing of data, okay? Now, most of the time that's not a big issue, right? However, if you have some large, heavy views, maybe with millions of records or dozens of fields, it can take some time to load those things. So if you have a lot on a single dashboard, it can feel like the app might not be performing optimally. And we want to make sure that when our users are interacting with the system, it's snappy, right? They're getting in there, everything's loading quickly, right? So we try to kind of reduce the amount of scrolling that occurs, therefore reducing the amount of resources that are loaded. Okay. One way that you can do this, and we're going to talk about a couple of ways here that you can actually reduce scrolling, is to use multiple dashboards. Okay, so definitely we've seen quite a few times customers just designing a dashboard for a particular role, but putting dozens and dozens of things on that dashboard. Okay, which is it's okay. It's there. It's gonna function, but it may not be the best experience. So one thing that you can do is don't be afraid to create multiple dashboards for your roles, right? So instead of one really long one, maybe you have 3 dashboards. And if you're using the dashboard tab feature, which a lot of folks use and like, which allows you to have your dashboards listed at the top of your screen, and you can click on them to quickly toggle back and forth between dashboards. That simple click is a lot easier from the user's perspective than scrolling around looking for information. Okay, so don't be afraid to have multiple dashboards for each role. Another thing that you want to try to do is optimize your use of space on the dashboard. Okay, so you may be familiar with a term called or referred to as data density, right? And what that really means is trying to fit valuable information and a lot of it into a small space. Okay, so reducing white space, reducing unused portions of dashboards is a great way to do that. Maybe you have a blank space on the dashboard, or you have maybe there's a form that has a lot of white space, or in a grid view there's a lot of white space. Anytime you can kind of scrunch things up or tighten things up to reduce white space, that is a great opportunity to optimize the space on your dashboards. Okay, you can also eliminate really large elements. So forms, for example, take up a lot of room on dashboards, right? So maybe there's a different way that we can allow users to interact with forms rather than just putting the big form right on the dashboard. Okay, and we'll kind of look at that here as we get into some examples. Another thing that you can do is group similar resources together. And really this kind of helps the user make logical connections in the data that they're looking at, right? So perhaps you have a couple of views on your dashboard that are pertain to, going back to the order management example, pertain to customers. And you have a couple of views that pertain to products that you sell. Maybe you group those things together to so that the user kind of knows where to go, right? Maybe one column is for product data and one column is for customer data, right? So that they can kind of scan those 2 columns quickly. Or maybe you group those things into multiple dashboards, right? There's a bunch of different ways to do it. But if you can, rather than kind of scattering everything all over the place, if you can group, it's going to make the experience that the user has a lot easier, right? They're going to be able to consume the content better. My personal favorite thing to do when I'm designing dashboards is try to gamify it a bit, right? So this really comes down to making it fun for the user to use. Right? For the user to interact with your dashboard. How do we make it fun? How do we want them, or how do we make them want to come into TrackVia to look at maybe some metrics or something on their dashboard? Right? It's really going to increase their involvement, and perhaps you can find something that they really care about personally and show that to them. So, every time they do something, they're going into TrackVia to their dashboard to look at their progress or something like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can gamify. We'll kind of look at 2 of those as we get through this presentation, right? But a lot of times we're so bogged down in the day-to-day, right? Feels good to just have something a little bit fun on the dashboard for the users. Okay. The next one we want to talk about here is a little specific, but it pertains to the flows feature. If you're familiar with the flows feature, awesome. If you're not familiar with it, what it does is it allows the user to kind of step through a set of actions. And when they've completed all those actions, it brings them back to the dashboard that they started on. Okay. Sometimes, depending on what the flow was doing, right, it can be a little gray to the user as to if the dashboard, or sorry, if the flow actually completed. So if we can give them a little bit of confirmation somehow on our dashboard that what they did was successful, then it kind of closes that feedback loop. Okay, and I'll show you what we mean here in a second. But imagine in the order management application that we're going to be looking at, if we add an order in a flow and it brings us back to a dashboard, maybe there's something on that dashboard that shows them the order that they just placed, right? So they know, yep, that was successful. Okay, so closing feedback loops. And then the last one we're going to talk about here is coordinating your color scheme across your account. Okay, this is not mandatory, right? But it's just something that kind of brings everything together into one big, nice, cohesive look and feel, right? Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do your color coordination. Perhaps each dashboard has a different color theme going on, and you've kind of modified the views to include those colors. Maybe you align all the dashboards and views with the color theme of your account, whatever it might be. But just thinking about that a little bit as you design really everything in TrackVia, your forms, your views, your dashboards. When you design these things, think about the colors that you're using, right? Try to make it just feel nice and like a nice cohesive app. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is we are going to look at a couple of dashboards in TrackVia. And we're going to look at 4 dashboards, a couple that could potentially be improved and a couple that take those dashboards and try to revamp them to be more meaningful. Okay, so I'm going to pull up another screen here. Let's see if we can get this going. So you should see a TrackVia account here, okay, that I'm logged into. And I mentioned this is a simple order management application that we've created. Okay, there's really 3 things that we're tracking here. Okay, we're tracking the customers that purchase things from us, and you can see they're all kind of fictitious characters: Leslie Knope, Michael Scott, Clark Kent, right? And then we track products that we sell, and the products that we sell it's sporting equipment. So, you know, hiking boots, kayaks, skis, skateboards, whatever it might be. And then we track the orders, okay? Now, I mentioned we have 2 roles that log into this application: sales reps and managers. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at here is a sales rep dashboard. So you can kind of imagine that we've sat down with our sales reps and we've said, hey, what do you want to see when you log into TrackVia? What actions do you need to complete? Okay, and what they've told us is that they need to see orders, right? They need to see the existing orders that are in the system, and they need to see which statuses those orders are in. Okay, an order can go through multiple statuses. The other thing that they need to do is place new orders, right? Record sales. Right? Those are the main objectives of the sales reps. Okay, so this dashboard that we're looking at here is a dashboard that we built that achieves those things. Okay, we can see there's a view in the upper left here that shows us all of our orders, 72 of them. And then we have a couple of additional views that show us the orders in each of those statuses. Okay, so we can see the ones that are in the placed status, the ones that are in the packed status, the ones that are in shipped and delivered, right? So kind of break down that overall view into several smaller views. Okay, so this achieves the objective, right, that they wanted. They can see all the orders and what statuses they're in. And if we keep scrolling down, then we see a form. And this form allows them to add new orders to the system. So if we think about what's good about this dashboard, Well, it's designed with a particular role in mind. That's good, right? I also like that it gives them what they need, right? It achieves the objectives that they needed, right? But I think there's also some things that could be improved here with this dashboard. Okay, so let's do a little exercise. All right, so we're going to take a second. Please use the chat feature of GoToWebinar here and send through some suggestions, keeping in mind the principles that we just talked about, right? All the best practices of ways that you think this dashboard could be improved. I'm going to wait till we get some suggestions here. We'll read them out. We'll go through some of them. Okay, so go ahead, send through in the chat. How do you think this dashboard can be improved? Go ahead. Doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple. Oh, wait. Okay, so we've got first suggestion here, making the all orders into a graph. Okay, so we've got this view here. Yeah, perhaps we want to make it a little more engaging. All these grid views can be difficult to look at, right? Okay, so maybe we change the type of view. Okay, got a bunch coming through now. Changing colors, great. Yeah, so everything is black and white, which is, you know, we've got some green here on our form, but absolutely, black and white is, it's hard to call out information when everything's the same color. Okay, so adding a quick graph, buttonize. I can't see who sent through the buttonize comment, but I love that. Yeah, maybe some of these things can be buttons instead of just these basic grid views. Widen some of the views so you don't have all this left to right scrolling. Yeah, absolutely. There's some white space. I see somebody said adjusting the white space, right? So this white space here, get rid of that. Get rid of this form, maybe buttonize the form too. Yeah, absolutely. All right, okay, so tons of comments coming through right now. This is awesome. Yeah, absolutely. These are some things that we can do to make this dashboard better. So what we'll do now is we'll pop over to a revamped version of this dashboard. And keep in mind, there are countless ways that you can revamp this dashboard, right? And it's all going to depend on who your users are, your organization, how you prefer to see things, personal preference from the admin, right? A lot of different things. But here's just some examples, or here's an example. Okay, so I mentioned dashboard tabs before. Also, I should point that out here. You can see in the upper right corner of my screen, I have 4 dashboards listed. These are dashboard tabs, right? They allow me to quickly, just one click, jump over to another dashboard. Okay? So I'm going to click on the sales rep home version 2. Okay, this is the new revamped version of that last dashboard that we looked at. And you'll see we've done a lot of the things that you made suggestions on, which is great. Okay, there's the first major thing that you'll notice is we don't just have 5 grid views as the first thing that you see. Okay, if we thought about it a little bit more, right, they wanted to see the orders and what statuses they were in. Maybe there was a better way to display that to them, right? There's a lot of different types of views in TrackVia that you can use to achieve different outcomes. And this lane view that you see here on the screen, front and center, is one of those view types. Okay, lane views are excellent for showing records that are in various statuses in a process. Okay, so when we think about our orders, they start in place and they go to packed, shipped, and delivered. So we have 4 lanes for those orders. And then within each lane, there's a card, and each card is an order. Okay, so we can see, you know, Clark Kent put in an order for 4 hiking boots. Okay, so these lane views are another way to achieve the same thing, really, that those 5 views achieved on the last screen. Okay, so, but it's a more engaging, cleaner way of looking at it. Okay, the other thing that you may notice here is we're no longer looking at all 72 of those orders. Okay, we're looking at, you know, 6 plus 4, 10, 13 different orders, right? we've narrowed this down to just, well, my orders, right? Because I'm logged into the system. This view will change now based on which sales rep is logged in, and that sales rep will only see their orders, okay? So if we sat down with the sales reps again, they might have said, you know what, I don't care about seeing everybody's orders. I just want to see my orders that have been placed, right? Now, perhaps there are circumstances where they do want to see all the orders, right? So we didn't actually take any functionality away here. We kind of just moved those grid views into some buttons over here on the right, okay? And these almost act as pseudo quick filters, right? So perhaps we're looking at this view and then I want to see all of the orders that are in, shipped status. I can click on this button and then I'll see all the shipped orders. Right, if I go back to the dashboard, and I wanted to see all the delivered ones, I can click on that and see all the delivered ones, right? So you can kind of see how that works. Rather than putting those views in their face, right? We kind of just put them at arm's reach instead. Still really easy to get to, but it's not the first thing. It's not the most valuable thing for them. Okay, we also included a search bar here. So you can kind of search for a view, maybe, or an order, maybe there's an order number that someone's returning and you need to pull that up. Great, you can do that. Okay, so different types of buttons and widgets that you can use on your dashboards, right? But you can see here that we've fit a bunch of views now into a small space. The other thing that we've done is we've removed that giant form from the dashboard. Forms just take up a lot of room, right? A lot of room. And if we're going for data density, trying to get everything into a smaller space, there's better ways to do that a lot of times. Okay, and one way is through a flow. This button here that we see in the upper right called Add an Order is a simple flow. Okay, it's actually a one-step flow. Really, really easy to create, but really valuable. Okay, so let's go ahead and just run through this. So if I click on the button to add an order, I see that same form that we saw on the previous dashboard. But this time it's full screen. It's a better experience for me, and I can go ahead and fill it out. Maybe Denarius is ordering some surfboards. She's sick of flying around on her dragon all the time. So she's gonna go surfing. And she's paying in cash because she's not super technologically savvy here. And I'm the sales rep. So when I submit the order in the upper right, I'm completing the flow and I'm going to be directed back to the dashboard. Okay, now we get the green message in the bottom right saying that the flow has been completed, right? The record was saved. But if we think about what I mentioned before about giving some other confirmation that it was successful, we can see here in our view, right? The newest order that's been placed is that order that we just put in for Denarius, right? So there's confirmation. I know as the user, yep, it's in there now. It's in that status. We did that properly, right? We're closing the feedback loop. Okay. Remember, if you have questions, send the questions through, and I'll see if I can get them answered as we go through. The other thing that we've been able to do now, because we've kind of tightened everything up into just this section at the top, is we've been able to gamify a little bit. So down here at the bottom of the dashboard, okay, we've got two views, okay? And what we've done is we've kind of done an analysis and said, you know, what are the sales reps, what do they really care about? You know, when we sat down with them and we asked what they wanted, they said, I want to be able to see my orders and I want to be able to place new orders. Great. What they didn't really tell us, but what we know is that they probably have a monthly quota that they're trying to hit, right? A number of sales that they need to make. So what we've done here is we've created a view for them. And you can see this bar chart here. This is actually a combo chart. It's a chart that you have access to in your applications or in your account, okay? The quota, my quota for the month, you can see is set at 2. And this bar that runs across the view is that quota, right? I'm trying to hit 2 sales every month. And then the bars show me how many sales I actually made, how many orders I placed that month. So if I'm a sales rep, right, every time I log into TrackVia, I'm going to see that bar creeping closer and closer to that line, right? It's gamifying it a little bit for me. So I'm trying, it's incentivizing me to, sell more. I want to go into TrackVia. I want to see that bar cross that line and get higher and higher, right? So kind of something that I personally, as a sales rep, would care about. Another way to gamify a little bit is a leaderboard, okay? Leaderboards can be a little, I would say, controversial, so it's not probably right in all scenarios. But perhaps it is, and we've seen customers do it many times, okay? The idea here is I, as a sales rep, can see how the other sales reps are doing, right, in terms of their monthly sales. I can see that myself, Kim, and Taylor we're lagging behind Kate and Nate. And Nate is crushing it, right? He's got 4 orders for the month. So here there's a little bit of competition going on, maybe breeding a little competition. I'm thinking, okay, how can I get to the top of that leaderboard? Or maybe a little bit more constructively, I could go to Nate and say, Nate, I see that you're doing really well here. What can I do to be to sell more bikes, right? How are you doing that? Right. So just a couple of ways that you can gamify a bit. Give them something that maybe they didn't necessarily ask for, but that they want. That they want. What's their real motivation? Okay. So we've taken that dashboard that was previously out there. We've brought it over. We've placed everything into a more succinct area. We've gamified. We've got a nice color scheme going on. You can see that we're matching our colors across our views into the theme of our account. You can even see, within this lane view here, we've got a gradient going on within each status just to help us differentiate a bit. All right, we'll switch gears to our reporting dashboard, okay? So we're now going to be thinking about managers. And what do managers want? They want to see report, right? So we're going to click over here to this reporting version 1 dashboard. So if we sat down with our managers and we said, hey, what do you want to see in TrackVia? Maybe they said, I need to see some reports. And the 3 main reports that I need to see are orders by shipping method. So how are we shipping our products? Ground, first class, 2-day. Okay. I want to see how our sales reps are performing. So that's this view in the middle here. So we can see who has the most sales, right? And maybe we need to do some training for the folks that don't have as many. And then they want to see a chart of just all the orders that have been placed by month, right? So we can see, are there highs, are there lows in our annual sales cycle, okay? But they also said, I want to see those 3 views broken down by customers and by products. Well, okay. So this dashboard here is one way to do that, okay? The top views here are just the overarching views. And then each row below that is a filtered version of the view above it, right? So this one is just filtered down to show, okay, the shipping methods for skateboards, and the orders by sales rep for skateboards, and the monthly orders for skateboards. And then if you go down another row, now you're looking at hiking boots. And if you go down another row, you're looking at kayaks, right? So you can see all the data, right? Okay, it achieves what they asked for, but it's not always just about that, right? It's about finding an elegant way to give them this information. Okay, so again, taking some of the things that people chatted through before, right? A lot of scrolling involved here. You can see you have to wait for everything to load. It might be difficult to find what you're looking for, right? There's a lot of things that look super similar, right? You got to do a lot of reading to find what you're looking for. It's not super logical. Now there is some sort of grouping here, right? They're grouped by rows, right? And like views are grouped by column as well. So there is some thought that went into this, right? But I still think there's potentially a better way to do this here. okay? So let's click over to our reporting V2 dashboard and see if we can come up with a better way or see a better way to do something like this. Okay. All right, so we're looking at version 2 now. First thing that we can see is that we've taken those 3 main views that they wanted to see and we've made them bigger. We've actually made them the most prominent thing on the dashboard, right? Now, if they want, so they can look at this, so they can digest this information, right? But if they want to filter down to just look at bikes or just look for a certain customer, right? There's a couple of different ways they can do that. An easy way is they can use these quick filtering options for each view, right? They can click on this quick filtering option and say, show me the records where the product is a bike. And then the view will kind of filter down to just bikes, right? Now that's easy, but it does require a few clicks. So maybe there's a better way to do that, okay? One way to do that is to leverage, and we're gonna get a little bit away from dashboards here, but another way to do something like that is by leveraging a form, okay? Leveraging forms. So what we have over here on the left are 2 little grid views, right? And these grid views show us all of our products that we sell, and they show us all the customers that are purchasing things from us, okay? And what I can do is if I wanted to filter all 3 of these views down to just bikes, I can just click on bike here, okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to open a form, and this form is going to have 3 views on it, okay? These are child views to the bike record. So all of the orders that are tied to the bike are now displaying in these views, and everything else is filtered out, and it happens automatically, okay? So we're kind of using this form here as a pseudo dashboard because I can now see those 3 views, the same 3 views from the dashboard, but they're filtered down onto that bike, okay? Now, there are a couple of benefits here that you also get from using a form as almost like a dashboard here, is that you can kind of layer or stack views on top of each other. So for example, some folks like to look at visual charts like this one here, while some people like to look at more numbers or data, right? So you can actually kind of layer the same data underneath in a different format, right? So this is actually the same data, but it's now showing as a pivot view type. Or maybe down here, when we look at this line, if you want to see the underlying data, you can use this drop down to the data, right? So now you're just kind of toggling different views, but you're aligning them with each other. If I go back to the dashboard, I can do the same thing by customer. Perhaps I click on Michael Scott. We're going to get those same 3 views, but they're filtered down to Michael Scott. All right, so again, thinking about the principles, right? We've honed in on the information. We're giving them everything that they want access to, but we're doing it in a much more succinct way, right? We've narrowed it down to no scrolling involved, right? It's just one screen, and everything is just a click away rather than scrolling and scanning for everything. Okay. All right. So I do have one question here. Let's see. All right, so the question is actually about the graph here at the bottom. And it's about the fact that only some months are visible. So we're just, in this example, we're just plotting the data that's behind the scenes. This is all test data in here. So we see it starts at February and it goes to April and June, right? It's only going to plot data that I actually have in the system. So if there's no data for a particular month, it's not going to plot it on there, okay? There is also the potential that because it's on a dashboard, it could take out some of the labels to fit it into the area properly. And you always remember you have the option to click on a view. So if you want to open this full screen, you can always click on that view to see more data. In this case, there isn't any, but if there were, perhaps more months would show up. All right. Let's jump back to our presentation here, and we're just going to talk about some key takeaways. So if there's two things to remember from this webinar, right? The first is to personalize your dashboards, okay? Think about the roles who are going to be using the dashboard, or the role that is going to be using the dashboard, and design it with them in mind. Bring them into a room, get a whiteboard, draw a big square, ask them what they want to see on there, right? Kind of hash it out, but design the dashboard with that one role in mind, okay? Don't be afraid to make multiple dashboards for that role and see if you can gamify it, right? So give them some personal stake in visiting that dashboard. Okay, so personalize your dashboards and then simplify, right? So try to reduce scrolling, use your buttons, get rid of really large elements on the dashboard, like your forms and your huge grid views. Group your elements together, right? There's a lot of ways that you can simplify what they're interacting with. Okay, so personalize and simplify. All right. Take a couple minutes for questions here. See if any questions come through. Remember, there's a lot of different ways that you can build things with dashboards, right? These are just a couple of examples of things that you can do to tighten things up and make the experience better. Got a couple more minutes here in the webinar, so. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. If you have questions while going through this, chat them through. But we didn't cover anything with designing actually building the dashboard. Sorry, we did design, right? Not actually building the dashboards in this webinar. So if you're curious about how to actually put the dashboard together, then you can go ahead and head over to the TrackVia University website. There's a course on dashboards. We've also got knowledge-based articles on building dashboards and best practices, so go ahead and check those out. If you need support, we're always here to help you, whether that's a quick phone call or email to the support team, or you need more complex assistance, someone to actually get their hands on your app. You can enlist the help of our professional services team, right? And there's a lot of different ways that we can help you there. So always remember that we're here to help you. The next webinar that we're going to be doing is at the end of June. Mark it on your calendar. We are going to be jumping back to app scripts. One of the more common ways to do or to use app scripts is to produce error messages for your end users. So we're going to be talking about how you can do that. And finally, of course, thanks for joining. We're going to post a recording to this webinar on the TrackVia University website. We'll send you the link. And then if you have time, we really, really appreciate if you fill out the survey at the end. It helps us kind of improve the webinars for the future ones that we run. Okay. All right, so I did see one question come through. So for anyone that wants to stick around for a couple minutes, great. It's about how we do the form filters, right? So back in TrackVia, we're talking about clicking on one of these records and looking at the form here. there's actually no filter involved. Okay, so that's kind of the beauty of a form, is that if you place a view onto the form, then the filtering happens automatically. So I'm looking at a record that pertains to bikes. So the child views will automatically filter down to bikes just by placing them onto that form. Okay. So no filtering needed. You just create the first view and place it onto the parent form. Okay. Other questions I'm seeing coming in now. Let's see. Other examples of gamification. I think a couple of folks, actually, I see a couple of questions for that. Yeah, so the ones that I just showed you here, let's see, get back to this dashboard here, are right, it's all about finding something that they really want to see, right? Perhaps instead of doing individual goals, right? So this view right here is an individual goal, right? I want to cross that 2 sale threshold, right? I'm not, it's just me that contributes to these bars. Perhaps you want to unify things a bit more and you have a group goal, right? Maybe all of your sales reps, maybe you have a goal for all of the sales reps to cross a certain threshold. So maybe, you know, it's not just my orders, maybe it's the whole team's orders or sales, right? So then you can work as a team to cross that line, right? That's another example of gamification. Another way is, I saw this recently, someone had a pie chart on their dashboard and they were using it as a pseudo progress bar, which I thought was really clever, right? So every day this pie chart started as empty, right? Essentially just one color. And as the day progressed, they did certain things within the system that caused, you know, call it sales for the day, right? As they, you know, added a sale, then the pie chart kind of, the smallest slice of the pie chart grew and grew and grew. And the goal was by the end of the day to have that pie chart be totally filled up. So again, it's really case by case on what your app is doing, but I loved that example. That was a great way to do a gamification of something that they're doing within the system. Let's see. All right, somebody asked about the dashboard tabs here at the top of the screen. These dashboard tabs, it's a global setting for your account. So if you go and you look at your account settings, and remember to look at account settings, you have to be a super admin user. So you might need to enlist the help of somebody else to do this. But if you go to your account and you go to the advanced customization tab, there is an option here for dashboard tabs. So if you want to see those, you can check this box and those will pop up there for you. Okay. Let's see. All right, I think that's it. So we're just a couple minutes over time. So thanks everyone for coming. I hope to see you on our next AppScript webinar. And I hope you learned some things today that you can turn around and implement in your own dashboards to make them cleaner and better and more valuable for your end users. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. See you soon.